Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 7 of the After Zero podcast. Crazy, we've had 7 weeks of this. We're joined by some familiar faces, and we're gonna kind of we're gonna pick up where we left off last week, which is kind of like where we're talking about the soul of games, right? Last week we talked about how one of the things that has been killing games, or at least in my eyes, it brought up, is that games lack community. They lack a reason to play that's not integral to the game itself. So,
Yeah,
what do you guys think
I was
about
gonna
that?
ask you. Well, I was gonna ask you like what specifically you were talking about when you said like the soul of a game for you. Like,
Oh
what is
yeah, yeah,
your
yeah. I mean,
for you?
so when I say
That
like
way we're all
soul,
on the same page and everyone watching can understand.
yeah, yeah. When I say soul of the game, I'm referring to like the community. What brings the game together? So many games, the only thing that brings them and like keeps them relevant is the multiplayer scene. Whereas like games before, that wasn't the case.
Especially nowadays.
Games were about the experience and like playing with your friends, right? Whereas
Yeah.
before it was, whereas now it's all about ranking. It's all about those types of things, and I feel like that actually is detrimental to games as a whole, in my eyes.
So like for me, I guess the souls of games is like
Not soul games like Dark Souls
the
and all that.
soul of a game. Is the tiny like care factors that the developers put into the game, right? Like the little things that matter. So for example, in Halo 3 on some of the maps and stuff like that, even in multiplayer and campaign and everything, there were like traffic cones, right? There was little things stacked against the wall. There was boxes and, atmosphere that was added as if it was actually in an active
like
environment.
life of the game,
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what you're
like-
saying is that like it has a you can imagine a living, breathing world
Like
around
you
this
could be
setting.
there yourself.
Right. Like
Yeah.
it looks like it was actually a military compound or something along the lines of that, right?
Okay.
But in the online experience, right, they've focused in Infinite so much on the competitive side of the game, right? They've removed all of those characteristics from the maps, right? One of the funniest things to do on the pit was to grenade past the rocket launcher spawn, right? And there was a traffic cone and a fusion coil that was there. And if anybody was standing, if you hit it right, like towards the middle where Invis was, right? The traffic cone would shoot across and you would get a splatter kill because the traffic cone is what killed them. Right?
That's
it was an
funny.
environmental kill, but it was funny
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you would
yeah.
see it happen because it was said they were killed by a traffic cone, right? So now all of the maps have nothing. It's blank slate maps. All of the walkways are clear. There's no boxes, no like world environment stuff added, right?
It's very obvious. It's completely competitive. Like
Right.
taking all that stuff out for this, just be focused on the skills.
Yeah, it's one of those
Right.
things of like when you make a map, you have like these maps that are symmetrical, right? Which makes sense if you're on like a boat where there's
Right.
like shipping containers. Like it makes sense why the map is symmetrical. But then you're in these random industrial environments or like that the buildings make no sense. The functionality of these buildings is strictly just for the guns to function a certain way. Like a good example of that I think of, like to use your Halo example, is there's one of the maps where it has like the tower, it has like the sniper in the middle, you can jump down below.
Yeah.
And that has the one
Come
shotgun.
on, in Halo?
In Halo Infinite, yeah. So
Yeah.
it has the sniper in the middle, it has the tower where you can shoot down.
Never mind. I thought the sniper was in the tower. I remember what map.
Nah.
This is
Yeah.
the training map with the
Yeah, it looks like the training map. Yeah, so that map, I don't know, like even though I guess it's a training map, so to speak, it just doesn't feel like it lives in a world. It doesn't breathe to me.
The map's name is Live Fire.
Yeah, Live Fire.
Yeah, Live Fire. So
Well, it
like,
feels very different from like the rest of the Halo maps too. Like all the Halo maps seem like very drastically different, but like seem like they're not part of the same game.
like you were saying with the symmetrical thing, right? Like all of Halo Infinite's maps, besides like maybe one or two, are completely symmetrical on both sides. It's designed strictly from a competitive standpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
It loses all of its fucking character because of that. And when you go back to the Halo 3
into
maps in particular, because I played the most, it was like one of the first online shooters I ever played.
Is that your
Besides Call of
favorite
Duty
Halo?
4.
Halo 3?
Yeah, Halo 3 is definitely
Is that
my favorite.
regarded as like the best one by most people, or is it Halo 2?
I think it depends on what console you had. If you had an original Xbox, right?
Mhm.
People regard Halo 2 higher, right?
Okay.
Well, Nick
Whereas-
is Halo 2, right? Because I know Isaac's also Halo 3, right?
I think no, Isaac's Halo 2, Nick's Halo 3.
Okay, it's the other way, guys.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
for me, it's Halo 3. That's the one I played the most of. Halo 2, I played the campaign and like custom games. Same with Halo 1. I never really got to play online. The first 2 online games I ever played were World of Warcraft and Halo 3.
Yeah.
And then Call of Duty 4 when it came out.
World of Warcraft was one of your first games you played?
Yeah, online. Like an actual online game.
Oh, okay, got
I guess
it.
no,
like
that
with
makes
other
sense.
people.
Well, let me ask you this. I
Um,
mean, when we're talking about the soul of the game, though, in relation to what you're talking about, do you think that this pertains to things besides Halo? Because I mean, Halo is a good example
yeah.
of what you're talking about. I could totally see like a ton of examples
Yeah.
when I think of Infinite. But what other examples do you think of?
A prime example I think of a good game that's got good world building and soul, but is also competitive is Apex. I really do. I really do believe that.
I can actually see that, especially with how the worlds are designed.
Right, like the
there
actual
is
map
character
itself.
to them and everything. Yeah.
There's bins, there's buildings, there's the loot system.
Actually,
Obviously, it has to be out in the open, right? But like the different locales, right?
Mhm.
Like they added lifelines, like medbay, to the map as a special point of interest on it, right?
Yeah.
And along with that, her stories from the Outlands cinematic came out, and it made the world feel alive. Right?
I think you touched on something though that is a little more important. I don't think it's as simple as the world feeling alive. It's like, how do you make the world feel alive? It's not just the environment. It's what you do before that, and it's what you do after, right?
Right.
So when you think about those things, like there's a lot of lore and thought that goes into Apex.
That's exactly what I was going to bring
Whereas,
up next.
like, if you go like a really good example towards the point that games don't have soul would be like PUBG or like Super People. The maps don't feel alive. They're strictly placed and perfectly blocked so that there's X amount of distance between each POI. There's this room is set up so there's this amount of thing. You go to a school, which the school has like guns all over the ground, whatever. Like the ground loot thing, take that out of your brain for a moment.
The ground loot thing is
anyway.
just video games.
But even just
game.
take like the layout and kind of everything that's around it in those particular games. They're pretty bad. Like nothing makes sense. One game that did do it well that's similar to PUBG was like H1. Actually felt like it had like some of the locations had like purpose, They're not as smooth as let's say Apex. But Apex has like characters to follow. So you have a personal attachment to these characters, you can relate to them or you like whatever about them.
They literally create a lore, unlike H1 and PUBG didn't actually create a lore. Like Apex makes that it's integrated into the game, and it's a defining point of the game is to have that lore built into
right.
it.
And all of Apex's backstory is all based off of the Titanfall universe, which is honestly my favorite shooter of all time.
Titanfall is your favorite shooter of all time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Number one, numero uno.
Number one, not
we
even
got it.
kidding.
I'm going to touch on this in a moment, but we got to hear that Mount Rushmore at some point. Like we got to hear this Mount Rushmore.
We can bring up each of our favorite shooters. So the games I want to bring up, because you talked about the souls of games, I can't believe we talked about Overwatch 2 this much, but I'm actually going to bring up
Overwatch 2. Oh my god.
So I'm going to bring up also. Surprisingly, this isn't a competitive game, but it is not a massive game, but it's an MMO. Which is New World, talking about the soul of a game.
Oh my god!
So the reason I'm bringing up New World is something I didn't, because I mean, at ground level, the game is very plain. Doesn't really look that amazing, to be honest. Some people might agree with me, but the game felt like life in it. Like you load in, you're playing, right? You play through the tutorial, you don't really get much. It's just kind of setting up the story and getting you started. Pushing you towards getting into the world. You get into the world with everyone. And the second you load in, you hear people hitting trees. You hear people mining.
I agree with that.
Okay,
and just stuff like...
I actually think otherwise, though.
So
when you said New World, I immediately thought negatively, which is funny to me. I immediately jumped to
the aspect that I'm talking about is like... Because, I mean, we even talked about this before, within our group when we were playing it, is it feels like the world is alive.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking about the soul of a game, I'm talking about the game feeling alive in regards to this MMO specifically.
So for sound effects and the community of the game, right?
Exactly. I think you're on the same wavelength.
I felt that was alive, right? The environments that I was in, seeing the animals running around that you could hunt and skin and stuff like that, right? That aspect of the world felt alive, right? Where I feel like New World lacked a soul was, why am I doing these things?
Oh, I mean, okay.
What is the purpose of
We could talk about how the quests and the creatures are the same the entire game.
Yeah,
you do the same quest at level 1 that you do at endgame. You kill the same creature at level 1 that you kill at endgame. Right. No, that part, trust me, I'm there too.
Like,
because and it's
just like the game throws you into this situation.
Not to mention the story is non-existent.
That's what I'm saying. It tries to write some kind of reason for why you're there. And then I literally couldn't tell you the story.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't actually know the story to the game because I felt like they didn't think like the story was important. And what they did well was, like you said, the community aspect of the game. It felt alive. Like, there's something nice about, it's kind of like when you're a kid. If you think about like the morning when you're a kid, you hear like the fucking grasshoppers. You hear like, you know.
The thing that I can see, like the reason I'm visualizing New World like this is, you go in and this has like an aspect where you can RP with your characters because
absolutely.
of these things.
Yeah,
so I think that's what gives it that life. And then, not talking about the gameplay side because that's the lackluster side of the game.
Like, so I think we both agree with that.
Right. I feel like if they hadn't written any story, right, and just kind of let the player base
Open world sandbox.
Right. That's kind of like Albion Online, right? And just let the world develop that way and the storylines develop that way, just from the player base RPing it, I feel like literally the game would have been better.
Yeah.
I think that New World makes me think of Chronicles of Illyria in the vision of it, right? Like Chronicles of Illyria, for those of you who don't know, it's like an MMO that's like, it was meant to be or touted to be like this super like, like just thinking about the next gen of what MMOs look like
and what a community is. Improves as you're playing it, essentially.
Yeah, and everything is impacted by the player base. Whereas New World, it seemed like they built the world for that without any of the systems. So they had a heavy rely on trading while making the trading meaningless besides just buying random items I can already get. Like there was nothing proprietary to me as a player as well, because I can just level every single trade, right? I can do all those things, so nothing feels special, nothing feels unique to me and what I can do. So I feel like I have no place in the world. I'm just another thing. Whereas the game needed to it needed to pick a side. Are you going to be an open world sandbox game that allows players to build their own conflicts and build their own worlds? There needs to be a housing system. There needs to be all these other systems that create player economy and create player drama at the end of the day. Like that's what you need.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I've always... sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, last thought, I think towards Star Wars Galaxies. Our brother always tells a story, and like we were there that day, but we always tell the story of the first time he ran into a Jedi. Now, Jedis were this very unique experience in Galaxies. Galaxies was not like you picked a class. It was you had to like get lucky, essentially, where you become force sensitive, no different than in the Star Wars universe. And then from there you can take Jedi training, but it's a grueling process. There's a whole thing you have to go through.
Well, there's other like specialties and trainings that you have to go through to get to a point where you're available to do that.
So it's funny because our brother's playing and like we're watching because like I think we only had like 1 or 2 computers at the time that were actually playing. I don't remember for sure, but I know I didn't have a computer. Quakers didn't have a computer from what I remember. It was like we were definitely taking turns. And he's like, "Oh my god, there's a fucking Jedi." We're like, "What?" And we like run over to the computer and this fucking bounty hunter's chasing him. So, and they're like, it's like one of those, it's like a fucking movie where he's sitting here, the bounty hunter's here, and the Jedi's running towards him. And it's like that point where like you pick, am I going to be the guy who helps the Jedi or am I going to be the guy who helps the bounty hunter? And then we saw him kill the Jedi. And it was like one of the coolest
knowing our
moments.
Older brother, we knew he was going to be being a bounty hunter.
but it was such a cool moment and the game had life. And then there was like I said, towards the Galaxies example, there was these people who would have bounties put on them and they would get information like, hey, did you see this person on this planet? And the dancers, which was a class in the game or a role, would give information. Yeah, they just passed through here. So everyone had a purpose, even the people who were just RP.
Yeah, so there was professions or classes in the game. Being an entertainer, where
Yeah.
entertainers would actually sit in cantinas or bars, within the game, dance for people, make music for people that actually buff players, either healed them faster, and this would give people a reason to sit down and talk with each other, both, the entertainer with the guests coming in.
And
Right,
it
I was
wasn't
gonna
just
say-
buffing. It was like in order to fully rest, you had to go to see the entertainers.
Yeah.
Whether that was the musician or like the dancers, like Twi'lek dancers. You
Right,
had
correct
to
me
do
if-
that in order to rest.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Galaxies, right, was kind of that sandbox-esque where people literally could RP whatever it is that they wanted. They could
Oh, yeah.
be a tradesman, they
Mhm.
could be a bounty hunter, they could really do whatever it was that they wanted within the world. Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
Right. Because the
I-
class system or the roles, it was the role system.
If you think of it, it's almost like what the Mandalorian is on the surface level, right? There's this overarching plot
I
that's
haven't watched
happening in the universe. Yeah, I'm not even going to give anything away, but there's a plot that happens in the universe, right? So there's a main story to the Galaxy's game, and there's a protagonist, and you're generally
Right.
the antagonist, where there's antagonists, you're generally the protagonist, whatever, right? There's this plot. But what happens with everyone else in the universe, which is kind of how I see Mandalorian, right? What happens on all these random planets with random people, right? What does that
Yeah.
look like? What's the underbelly of it is what Mandalorian covers. But Galaxies was like, what's everyone?
Yeah.
It's kind of how I would
Yeah.
think of it. Obviously, there's MMO driven like concepts and stuff, but I think about that game and like how alive it was and some of the emotions that game builds up. And it's because
I mean,
the
look at how you
community
told
was
the
alive. right.
right.
I mean,
But then like with New World just decided to like sit in the middle in a weird way to where the community feels alive. Like there's something, like I said, really cool about like when you have a memory and you think of like those early morning sounds. And
to
New
be
World
fair,
gave
you
me that
had to
same
interact
thing.
in New World. Like
Yeah, I
you
was-
had to, right?
I was gonna say, New World gave me that same sensation though. Like the sound of someone mining in the distance, you're
Dude.
like, oh shit, like that's
Dude,
like
You're like,
really
oh
cool.
shit, that's close.
I mean,
or
what
oh
I've
shit,
always-
that's far.
What I've always said about New World is like it had an amazing foundation to be a great game. Like it had everything needed to be a great game, but didn't have the depth and detail to be that great game. Or
Right.
like you said, any sense of what?
It had the great foundation to be a game. It just wasn't a game.
Well, it's like we're still in like the rudimentary steps of the game essentially,
Mhm.
right? Like, and it's like you said, there was obvious lack of direction, and maybe it was a test for something that never came to true fruition. But one of the cool things about it too, like you were talking about, is it had like people literally make guilds to be logging companies for other guilds because of the 3 different factions going to war over the different lands.
Right.
Which again was an amazing foundational idea that never got really much past that.
right. Like,
But while Oh, go
it
ahead.
was it was definitely cool how there were literally guilds built around the professions of just focusing on one.
Mhm.
But I feel like the way that WoW does professions, I actually like because it makes you.
do you do
pick.
professions in WoW?
Yeah, I did actually.
Explain what you mean by that. What do you like about the system of
So,
WoW?
so choosing a route to go, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like choosing a career in real life, right? Can you make changes? Yeah, obviously. People are sit there, go to law school, and then become doctors, right? Like there's people that have done those things.
Mhm.
There's people that do an entire military career and then became NASA pilots. You know
Right,
what I
right,
mean? So
Buzz Aldrin. I guess.
Oh,
that's
so what's
all
the
we-
relation to WoW?
to WoW, like you have to pick professions and you're stuck to those, right? You can't just have them all like New World did.
Okay.
Where in New World you had access to every profession yourself.
Yeah,
which
like you get 2 professions. You can switch at any
you
time,
can switch,
but you can't have them all at once. Correct.
right. So it makes you focus on one. So it makes that community aspect, or at least back in the day, it did,
Yeah.
where like you were in trade chat and you were asking, looking
Well,
for
professions had
inscription.
impact and like
or-
end game reasons to use them and shit.
Do you
like
know
that.
what would be a
Right.
really good game? Is if you just took New World's foundation and gave the ArcAge team the ability to use it for their systems. Like I don't know if you ever played ArcAge, but it had such unique like economy mind. Like there was obviously like a strong economy thought when they made the game in terms of professions, trade routes, shit like that.
Yeah.
Different means of transportation, different things that would allow you to harvest faster, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Housing, right? All those things that New World missed as far as systems go. I almost see New World with a identity crisis of not being enough of each thing. Like I feel like maybe they started with all these aspirations that this is what the game looks like for us, and then they were like pulling it, like they had to pull so many things back, and eventually they landed in the middle of all those things while not being good at any of them.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Is it was good at everything and a master of none.
Right.
And that's literally New World. It was like, this is decent, yeah.
Well, even the weapons, right? It's like all the weapons. There's like these weapons feel good, but it's not tipping the edge and be like,
right.
this
It's
is
not,
my weapon.
It's not
This
Final
is me.
Fantasy class identity good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where like all of your buttons that you push look cool, feel good to use, have a rhythm to them, right?
Oh, really?
Like,
Why didn't you play 14 then, Sean?
so, like I said, I like Final Fantasy's combat.
Dude, he's got like ADHD, bro. Right? He can't fucking do the whole single player RPG shit.
I'm just not into like the solo MMO and then we group up every once in a while thing. Like I just don't get into the story driven shit like that.
Oh yeah, we always knew that.
like the only games that have ever pulled me like that are like Kingdom Hearts and some of the older Final Fantasy
And to be
games.
fair, there is a lot in Final Fantasy 14 that's just grueling, walking around, deliver tasks.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me how you're like, the one game that really did it was Kingdom Hearts. It has the most convoluted backwards.
You can't even tell what the full story is.
Yeah, dude, if you ever watch a fucking synopsis on this shit, it's like, Sora is a Sora, but he's also Roxas, but he's not Roxas. But he's also a part of the Organization 13. Organization 13, you're just like...
But if you think about that with Sean, it makes sense. It's so crazy and convoluted. Sean's mind never stops because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
He's like, we can go in any direction.
Trying to figure this shit out.
It can be anything.
Right.
Dude, he's like that episode of Family Guy where there's like, Peter, you can pick the boat or you can get the mystery box. He's like, we should get the mystery box. It could even be a boat.
Right. No, for real.
So I never played the third one, but speaking of the solo game, how do you guys feel about Kingdom Hearts? Because I feel like, the first and second one are, pretty amazing as far as having soul of a game.
Yeah.
And direction and all that stuff.
The third one, obviously it kind of hits on that whole nostalgia factor of the first two games, right?
Okay.
But I can't put my finger on it. I played through the third, and it just, I don't know if it's because I'm older now. I don't know if it's the way that it was made, where like it still had the Final Fantasy aspect in 1 and 2, right? Of like the spells being from Final Fantasy, right?
Mm-hmm. Similar inspirations, yeah.
And
the Square Enix.
The combat systems felt good in 1 and 2, right? Even when they added like the flight and the dual wielding of keyblades, like that was cool, right?
Yeah.
Third just kind of takes it to like a whole nother area. Like,
is it like elevating it in a bad way?
Yeah, like it's like, okay, I spawned in the fucking Big Thunder Mountain train from Disneyland.
Oh, that's right. 3 added summons like Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy's always been big on summons. Yeah. So, and all the summons are based around... Okay. Well, this is like one of the things about it was they're all based around Disney theme park rides.
Right. Like the teacups or like Big Thunder Mountain, the train set, right? And like it almost made the game feel too easy because you summon the damn train and you ride it around and it fucking one-shot shit, right? And you just clear an entire encounter without ever swinging your Keyblade.
Well, I think one of the things with Final Fantasy is like that's always been a thing of the lore, and these summons are like this powerful thing that these special group of people can do, and they're like basically these like almost deities. Like there's always the same ones in each game. You have like Ixion, Ifrit, you have Bahamut, Ifrit, like they're all.
Speaking of which, 16's story is literally like all based around summons. The new Final Fantasy 16 that's
and I could see where adding that into a game like Kingdom Hearts, it's like, why the fuck am I a Keyblade wielder? Because obviously this shit's way better.
This shit's way better. Yeah.
I mean, it's also like, can you do it all the time? I think that has an effect on that.
It's got like a cooldown, right? But like, the thing is that, like, don't get me wrong, they're cool. Like seeing the different Disneyland, like the first time you use them, you're like, oh shit, this is dope. It's the Pirates of the Caribbean boat, right? And like shooting cannons and shit, and like Donald and Goofy are, clapping people,
Whoa.
right? But like after a while, you're just like, every time it's up, you're using it, and you're just like, oh, I got a new one now. Cool, I'll change to that one.
I mean, there's.
Like,
I mean, listen. If you ask everyone how hard Kingdom Hearts is, I don't know if people who struggle to play Kingdom Hearts, except for the fight against Sephiroth in the Coliseum.
Proud mode.
Kingdom Hearts 1 or 2.
Proud mode.
There was also the Frost Giant, right? I think.
The fight against Riku with Keyblade or Riku's sword in Kingdom Hearts 1 on Proud mode, it's literally like the Sephiroth fight. And then Proud mode in 2 versus the dude with the spears at Beast Castle. Fuck that! I broke 3 PlayStation 2 controllers with that. I
feel like you should wonder why your parents allowed you to break 3 PS2 controllers.
Some of those were like old ones for the like base model ones because I didn't want to break my blue one. But then I like hit my blue one when I was holding it in that fight, and I broke the fucking joystick on it, and I like cried.
But I was gonna say you already broke 1. Why'd you break 2? Like,
I'm not surprised by this sequence of events. However, what I'll say with that is, for me, Kingdom Hearts, like the combat's never been too engaging for me.
Yeah, no.
Because with RPGs, I actually enjoy JRPG style RPGs where like it's turn-based combat. It's more like just slower paced. I'm not too big into real time. I'd just rather the game have a different engine. Yeah, I don't find it as engaging for some reason because I just want it to be a different system that's better.
Right.
But the actual problem with Kingdom Hearts for me is just that the game is like way too linear.
Okay.
It doesn't, for a game that has these amazing worlds and this amazing story, I guess, or this super complex, amazing story that's entwined with other stories that we know and love as like children or just in general.
Yeah.
It takes me away that I can't explore that more on my own terms. So they're just being locked.
Is there extra content like in the game, like once you finish them? Because compared to something like you're playing right now, Jared, like Spider-Man, right? Like it has a bunch of shit to complete after the story itself, which I'm sure is what you're kind of talking about.
I don't even mean adding shit to it like that. I don't mean collectibles, but
Kingdom Hearts had farming for the ultimate weapon, right? So going around and hitting some
typical
of the
Square Enix shit.
I would say that's
to where you have to go around to like the Trinity pads to get at different points in the game. You have to go back to locales to get the items, right? So you have to re-explore that area again to get back to that other secret spot in order to use the Trinity once you have that unlocked to get those items to build.
Yeah, I do want to add. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by it. But what game is playing in the background? Is that Halo? Is that WoW? Is that
game
Overwatch?
Look at your TV.
It's Overwatch, okay.
It's Overwatch.
I saw a car. I couldn't tell if the car was realistic, like Call of Duty, or cartoony, like Overwatch.
Are you looking at it through the little window?
Yeah,
there's like one little hole that you have. That's so fun. Dude, you're sitting there talking about this. He's like,
Roadhog, but I'm not 100% sure.
I was watching Overwatch League.
That's so funny. It's just funny the fact that he's sitting there. He's like, bro, I gotta ask. He's just so distracted by the tiny little window in your chair.
Well, it's like I was looking at it every once in a while. Then I got in a moment where I just got stuck on it, trying to figure out which game it was. So I just had to ask.
Yeah, it's Overwatch League.
But more towards the point, it's just hard for me to be like okay with these amazing worlds not being able to discover them more freely. And I don't even mean like I need an open world of the whole Tarzan jungle. It's just like, can I get a bone? Like the areas in Kingdom Hearts feel so limiting. They're so small. And it's definitely
one zone
get
leads
this,
to the next
get
zone,
this, get this, get this, get this, go next.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, I agree with that, right? Because it's kind of that like set instanced area, right? That I actually hate in games, which is funny because that was like my big complaint with Final Fantasy is
14,
MMO,
right?
Was like constantly having
the loading screens and all that. Yeah.
I'll challenge that, by the way.
But Kingdom Hearts 3, I will give it to him there. The zones were much larger and felt more expansive. Like when I was doing
more like seamless gameplay, essentially.
Right. There wasn't as many loading areas. There wasn't, things like that where like the actual area you were exploring was a lot larger. And there was little like hidden Easter eggs and different areas and stuff like that that was cool to find. Right? Like I messed around in the Toy Story area for a long time, just fucking around.
That's cool.
Yeah, like that was cool. And like some of the mini games that they added too were cool, like the Zerg Blaster stuff and just little aspects like that that were entertaining. They were different. Oh,
Sean's
Oh,
frozen.
Sean's frozen for
Frozen.
me. More tech difficulty. See how it is?
Yep.
I never actually played. I never actually played Kingdom Hearts 3, which I should probably
Yeah, I
go and
didn't
visit that at some point in time. I think it's on Epic Games now.
yeah.
So there's a way for me to play it, which I think, you know, I mean, kudos to them if they did open it, but I think there are some games that just do it better. And part of the Kingdom Hearts problem is that there's Sora and your party, and then there's bad guys. And there's nothing in between in these areas for the most part. A good example of this is like Star Wars: The Old Republic. It has
Yeah.
really set zones, but the world still feels alive. There's still other stories going on. There's still characters that are doing things.
Right.
MMOs are really good at doing that. Single player games generally aren't, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely
Unless
I
there's like
agree
a
with
side
that.
quest or something, right?
It's
Mhm.
it's just like I feel like the story itself is focusing on a set couple of characters anyways, which is why they have such a primary focus on that.
Mhm.
Is like there really isn't anything else in the world other than these couple of side characters that you meet in the different zones, and then all of the enemy characters.
Well, that's
Well, I
kind
mean,
of that
I
kind
think
of takes
overall
away from it though.
The idea of what's it called? The idea of like Kingdom Hearts was like truly all nostalgia, right? And
Yeah.
you can see that with everything that's implemented into it past, you know, Sora and that small group.
Yeah.
Like everything in it is just straight nostalgia and like, hey, this character's in the game, look what they're doing here and all that stuff. So
Well, dude, it was just like some
It's
of the
complete fan service.
so-
Yeah, yeah.
Some of my
and
fondest
I'm not saying that as
memories-
like a bad thing, but I'm saying like I feel like you're gonna get that feeling because of that.
Well, I'm
Right.
saying that's a bad thing, but
So some of my fondest memories were like the first time I visited Halloween Town in the game.
oh,
Yeah, 'cause that's one of your favorite. Yeah.
Right? Like
Oof,
seeing
yeah.
like Donald and Goofy having to blend into the area with their outfits and then Sora in
I was
his
saying-
outfit.
And I always appreciated that where you go to certain places and your outfits actually do change to be along with that story.
Right. Or like
always a nice touch.
Donald being a fish and Goofy being a sea turtle in the Little
Yeah,
Mermaid
yeah.
area. You know what I mean? Like
you know
Sora
what my
being a mermaid
favorite? You
or
know what my
merman.
favorite worlds is?
What?
Mulan, bro. I
Oh,
love.
yeah,
oh my
absolutely.
god, dude! Opening up fucking Kingdom Hearts 2 to Mulan, oof,
Dude,
goated.
the first memory I have of the first Kingdom Hearts game was fighting Cerberus at the Coliseum.
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, that fight.
Mine is losing the
super
fucking
cool.
race to Riku like 20 times
I was
for
gonna
no
say, doing
reason.
that race over and
For
over.
no
yeah,
reason
right in
other
the
than
beginning.
missing the goddamn input on a jump.
Yep.
Like the only
You know-
reason you ever lose that thing.
All right, so which weapon did you guys choose at the start though? Did you choose the
Uh,
sword,
I-
the shield, or the?
I took the sword.
I don't remember what I chose. I
Or the
definitely didn't
staff.
choose the fucking staff. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no.
I'll tell you right now.
I don't know if anybody in our group would have chosen the staff.
Yeah, no.
Audra Draft might have. I don't know.
I think she probably did, but
I
I'm
think
pretty
on,
sure I chose shield.
I think on proud mode I took shield, just because I wanted to do. I like.
Oh, yeah,
got
I'm
stuck
talking
between
the
shield
very
and
first,
sword.
the very first time you played, like you
through.
loaded in and it gave you 3 choices. Like which one did you choose?
Yeah, it was definitely. the
I'm
sword.
pretty sure I picked sword.
Yeah.
But-
The moments that when we to circle it all back, right? Like those moments live in my head, like to this day. It's like the first time I dropped the Titan in Titanfall, right? Those things like were magical. They had like care put into those moments, those encounters, right? That I don't feel exists in a lot of, I'm gonna say 90% of the games today, of where there's a reason we gravitate towards certain games and certain like content, right?
Mhm.
Which is why I feel like the gaming space, like I took a break from gaming for almost 2.5 months because I was so upset with the state of where games were at currently.
Yeah, couldn't
Hey.
climb an apex, and you're just like, fine, I'm gonna step
No,
away.
I climbed an apex. I hit my goal and then was like, yo, I need to step away from this shit. But like coming back and playing like Overwatch 2, right?
I was gonna hook back around to that because I brought that
Right.
up earlier and didn't really talk much about it.
Right, like Overwatch has such great character development such
Which
great
honestly, I'm
character
so
design.
happy like with how we're all feeling about Overwatch too, and
Yeah.
that we're all like into it and playing it.
Has everyone here seen the animated short for Kiriko?
Bro.
Okay. So actually, since
obviously
you bring it up,
he obviously didn't watch
give
the
me-
fucking podcast where we talked about it.
right. Give me the top 5 in order.
No. Top 4 because you're giving me your Mount Rushmore of Overwatch shorts. You know what I mean?
Of Overwatch shorts. Okay, so I'd have to say like my first would have to be the actual trailer for Overwatch 1.
That's
Okay.
when it's so you're talking about the one
Tracer
with
and
Winston,
Genji.
When they're in the Hall of Champions
Not
or
Genji,
whatever.
Tracer, Winston. they're
Tracer,
looking
Winston,
at Doomfist
Reaper,
glove.
Widowmaker,
Yeah.
and then the two.
It's the fucking
characters.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, the
The
It's
kids.
kids.
Yeah.
I think it's called like the Hall of
The world
Champions
could
or
always
something.
use more heroes. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one's my number one. I
That's
still
wild.
watch. I
That's
still
wild.
watch that one today, and it still gives me goosebumps. I love that one. Because
That's actually
when-
interesting coming from you, to be honest. I would
Well,
not have expected that.
I think that also coupled
He was in the
with that
service
was
at
like,
that time. He was like, I could have been a hero.
Well, like I think
Hero of War. Is that what?
Oh my
I'll
god.
be?
Number 2 is Soldier 76. Because Jack Morrison just really resonates.
No.
Oh,
It's actually-
old
it's
habits
actually-
die hard.
It's actually the Diva one for me. The
That-
one
that was
where
a
I
good
love that
I like the Diva one.
Okay.
And then
The shooting
Soldier,
star. Then Soldier. Okay.
and then Kiriko.
So those are top 4, huh?
Yeah, that's my
That's
top
your
4.
top 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because we're brothers, Jared. Maybe that's why it's our number 1.
Bro.
But I can
this-
say I can say confidently, Jared
And-
and I number 1 is Dragons.
Yeah, numero
Okay.
uno,
Yeah,
Dragons.
The brothers.
Dragons?
I literally forgot about that
Dude,
one. That one's
Dragons-
actually
How
really
do you
good.
forget about that one?
Thinking
That-
about
I would
Dragons
replace-
gives me fucking goosebumps right now.
There's no way you miss fucking Genji fading in with the fucking green glow on his suit with a dark ass background.
Well, that's the one where he's like, "This is how you honor your brother with incense."
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, with
so
incest.
yeah.
What were you?
Oh. Wait. Circle back. What?
Was incest
yeah,
off
I would probably change the position of the Soldier one. If I was doing a top 5, Soldier would be my last because I actually thought the
Gotcha.
Kiriko one was dope. But
Gotcha.
I would change
Kiriko's-
the Soldier position one with the brothers, the
So,
dragon.
surprisingly enough for me, I'll give mine next. And so it's Dragon's number 1 for me. I put Kiriko second. I really did
Okay.
love that one. I mean, so the only part of that I didn't really care.
Bro, it's
too
like
much
I just
about-
like the Asian ones. I don't know.
Oh no, what I didn't care, like the empowering the 2 people. I understand it because of the ability itself.
Yeah.
Like the kid screaming stuff didn't really do much for me. It was just kind of a funny thing.
Yeah. I think that was
Um,
meant to like take you out of the moment a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
it's meant to break the tension.
Especially like the tone that was said. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
keep going with that because that shit was hard. Let's see. Then the next one, I actually loved Junker Queens. Surprisingly
Yeah,
enough, I did not.
You're saying your list right now, and I know you're gonna. If you forget this one, I'm gonna be mad at you because I feel like ours are similar. So
Keep
Okay.
going. Okay, so
And
Junker
then
Queen.
4th, shit. Why can't I remember which one this was? Because I literally just watched them all the other day. Fucking.
So did I.
must not be that fucking good. All right, number 1, boys,
No, because
Dragons. No,
I
hold
can
on.
think about it.
Don't finish your list. Dragons, number 1. Number 2, Reinhardt, Honor and Glory.
Jesus
Okay.
Christ! I couldn't think of
Number
fucking
3,
Reinhardt.
number 3, Kiriko. Number 4, I don't know why. I love this
Actually,
fucking
no.
short.
I'm sorry. No, my 4th one's Widow, not Reinhardt.
Okay.
Number 4 is
Okay,
Widow.
so it's funny because number 4 for me is Bastions with Widows is number 5.
I was gonna say
No,
love Bastions.
I'm not surprised. I think it was really cool, like the going back and showing like the actual war
yeah.
and like showing the work put into those clips to show that was really sick.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
also
can
writing a
respect that.
character about a sentient bot is like so hard to do on a character that doesn't speak, right?
Yeah.
A character that doesn't speak just goes beep boop beep boop. Like there's 2 characters in that short, and you feel such strong emotion towards Bastion in those
Yeah.
moments. Like you're like, oh shit, and again, it makes the world feel like there's real shit. So it's not just the people; it's like the fucking robots too. Like
Yeah.
it's
So,
kind
so,
of
so I was
you know.
half paying attention. So what was your list? Was Dragons, then Reinhardt second,
Reinhardt, Honor and Glory number
and
2.
then Kiriko,
Kiriko.
and then what was your
Bastion.
4th?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Dragon,
No, that was 4.
Dragon, Reinhardt, Kiriko, Bastion.
Did I
Yeah.
get 4 or 5?
You gave 4.
Yeah, because I said dragon. Yeah, okay, that was 4.
And then I said Widow's is number 5. I love the I love like the narration of Widow and all that shit. Like
Reinhardt's had Brigitte in it too, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But she didn't do anything. She was just there as a character.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah, no, the reason I loved Widows is like the entire sequence of it all, like the use of the abilities. Like they used like every single one of their abilities that each of them has, and then it showed the the entire building sequence of Widow running through, hitting all those guys was just completely clean. The shot is like was
the
perfect.
twist
honestly.
at the end.
It was fucking perfect.
That's the one
like
where
the
she's
way
being chased by a Tracer, right?
Yeah, Tracer's chasing her.
Tracer. So they have the explosion. Tracer's falling, and Widow aims at her fucking core, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh shit, she's gonna kill Tracer, but you're like, Tracer has recall. Okay, Tracer recalled, and she headshots her target, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So the whole time, Tracer's like trying to protect like Zenyatta's higher person or whatever.
The leader of the Omnibots.
He was like the leader
the
of
religious leader.
He's essentially Martin Luther King, is how I saw it.
We're all one in the iris.
It was the whole uniting of the Omnibots with humans.
Like I said, not Martin Luther King. Like
her setup when she first like does her grappling hook on her leg, like they show her spinning it, and then she drops down to look at the side window as she's hanging upside down. Or when Tracer's chasing her, and as she rolls, she puts the fucking mine on the wall that Tracer runs through. Or when Tracer tackles her at the end, and you see her shoot her grapple to the wall, but they don't focus on it. It's like it's just something you can catch. Where she all those things was so perfectly done.
I think it's like the storyboarding of it, right? Like, how do we make this character like function in the Overwatch world without just being like, well, her abilities don't matter because this is what she like. Because they could have just made Widow just a sniper, and then in the Overwatch game itself, she's a sniper who has a grappling hook. She has this mine. She does these things, or she has this thing.
Right.
Whereas
you see the whole identity of the characters.
Exactly. Same thing with Tracer, right? The dashing, all that, the recall. Like I said, the audience gets like their win, where they're like, "Oh, like the hero won," and then it's taken away. And even Tracer's like, "Oh shit!" And then she's like shocked. And then Dragon's the emotional the connection between Hanzo and Genji in those moments, and Genji's like wisdom through all those things.
Telling two stories. But the same story.
Yeah, it is so good. Honor and Glory. I love that one character's flaws. Like everything is his fault.
You literally within 3 minutes saw character development.
Yeah,
like it was just all there.
And then
where he went from being the arrogant, offensive guy to being like the guy said, be their shield, and that's what he became.
So, the editing in Kiriko's is like the best editing, though. To me, the editing is so fucking good.
Her character had so much personality. Like
So-
even the little star at the front when she's talking to the kid,
Like
like
when she's talking
that,
to
all that was honestly just top tier to me. Amazing.
Yeah. So like the cool part with Overwatch, right? Like circling back to the souls of games, right? Is like when you load into the maps, it's the small. It kind of brings me back to my original point with the traffic cone in Halo, right? It's the small little intricacies in the maps, the things that are on the computer screens, right? Like even down to like the Blizzard throwing in like Hearthstone in the background, right?
Yep.
Like,
well, in your number one, Sean, the security guard's literally playing Hearthstone,
right,
Yep.
right on
looking
the
at cameras,
tablet, yeah. And so like it's those little things, and then when you load into the game and you load into the map, even if you're playing competitive or not, like I still go around and like smash the dishes. Or, like punch the ketchup bottles off the countertop of Route 66. Or, I punch the telephone thing and it starts raining money, right?
Dude,
it's the little tiny intricacies that make the soul of the game for me.
So Keenan's favorite short is also Dragons. He's a Genji lover, whatever.
Yeah.
There was one night where me, Keenan, and my brother reenacted that cinematic in the fucking map, basically. Like, we were just, like, fucking around because, like, we, like, just loved the characters so much. We loved the story it was telling. We're just, like, fucking... It's, like, fucking 6 a.m. Yeah, it's just, like, 6 a.m., dude, and we're just... That's what we're doing. And that's... And like you said, like, the intricacies in the maps, like, the little tiny details that you're like, why would you spend so much time on that? It's like, because this is what makes it real. This is what brings you back. This is what keeps you here, Right.
Yeah. You zoom in on a newspaper, it's got dates and it actually says things. You know what I mean? Like it's little tiny things in the assets in the game that keep that world alive.
to call back to that quote, it's like it's not just the tree, it's also the whole forest. Like there's
Right.
focus on the tree, but we're also looking at the forest.
Mhm.
It's not just the tree, and it's not just the
It's
forest.
how each branch of the tree makes the forest, right? Like
Right.
that's definitely
Yeah.
how they've done it. And I think another game that does that so well is Grand Theft Auto 5. Like you got to give them their props. Rockstar knows how to make a world.
I mean, Grand Theft Auto in general, right?
Just Rockstar, I mean Red Dead, GTA, like they know how to make worlds feel alive to where when you hop off the game, you can imagine that there's like a world going on and there's random interactions on the street. There's like all that shit. Like they do such a good job of making the game feel something. Like when you're playing, it's not just, oh, there's just this city and there's random pedestrians doing default walks and driving, like that's it.
Right.
It's like there's actually shit that goes down.
Right. And like the reason I try to bring up like some of the like competitive shooters, right, is because they have that competitive side to them, right? But it's still that same like MMO-esque world feeling alive while playing an FPS.
They're actually giving you lore with it instead of it just being, hey, this is, competitive, capture the flag, same on both sides of the map. Go at each other,
right?
Pat the meters.
Like a prime example is we were talking about Bastion Short, right? Eichenwald, right? The map itself, you see some of the bots over.
I mean, that was Reinhardt Short.
That's Ryzen. I would say that's Reinhardt Short.
You see the bots and stuff overgrown, right? From the fights and everything like that. The whole map feels like it was
the
once
character from the trailer that dies. You see him
on the throne in Eichenwald,
right on the throne, right? So like that map itself has so much story and world building in it that the map feels alive to be on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the part that like there were similar things that were in Halo maps. And in Halo 3 specifically, there were maps that had like some of the hieroglyphs and stuff like that people were actually deciphering that 11 years later that they found out actually had messages written into the maps. Shit like that, right? Then you go into fucking Halo Infinite and you see similar hieroglyphs, and then the people that spent those years decrypting that shit decrypt it and it says nothing. It's just assets replastered over and over and over again.
Somebody saw it in the original one. We're just like, oh, let's make our own.
Right.
There's no thought behind it. It was just like,
the Halo 3 had it. Let's throw it in there. But you know, it's funny, Sean. You touched on something there that you talked about, like, like Eichenwald does this. Hanamura, like, that's one of my favorite maps. If you go to Hanamura, you'll see the arrow spot that Genji cuts in half. You'll see the fucking
two halves,
like I'll say like the little post, one of them's broken because they broke one during the fight. Like shit like that, to where it's like it's just such good callbacks. And like I said earlier, it's about what you do before and it's about what you do after. It's not just what's in the game, because what's in the game, there's always gonna be a better game. There's always gonna be like there's always gonna be just like something, There's gonna be a game that has newer aspects, has all these things, but what you'll remember is like the world that it was made and those experiences you experience within that world.
Right. And so like that's why like for me it's those small details that even on Call of Duty, like old Call of Duty maps, right? They had newspapers, they had specific locations from the campaign, they had like trash.
Their map had movement.
Like, the map had like trash blowing in the distance. You saw like the little bit of like city outside of the area that you were fighting in, right? It felt like an active like war zone at certain times, right?
Like some of the maps with like the broken airplanes and shit, or like Terminal when you think of that fucking story mission.
Like even maps that weren't in the campaign, like Crash, right? Crash is a rendition of Black Hawk Down, right? So like. There was things that were put into those maps, like barricades, blocks, like barbed wire, all of the decorating and the way that the maps were built. They looked like actual active war zones, right? But then you go to some of the more modern Call of Duty maps, and it's like, okay, there's a barrel on this side of the hangar, and there's a barrel on that side of the hangar. It's identical on each side. And it's because people bitched about map design where some spawns had advantages to others. You know what I mean?
I feel like this comes back because, I mean, we're all competitive players here, and we've had this conversation before about like the pros versus like a casual player. It's like the casual player cares about, all of it, and the pros just looking about the competitive side, which
Right.
essentially comes to the end of everything symmetrical to
Right.
make it just based on skill,
Yeah.
which a part of me understands, but another part of me is also like I've talked about before, it's like pros need to become pros of that game the way the game's made, with
Right.
the vision of the developer, not the vision of the pros.
Right. That was the thing that was like me and you talked extensively on it, right? Of like
Mm.
certain maps, you would learn not to go a certain way off rip because you would get spawn throwing knifed, you would get spawn tubed, right?
Mhm.
Like you had to adapt to that map based on the side you spawned on, right? And like people abused noob tubes and throwing knives and that type of shit, right? But it didn't stop us from winning games.
Right.
It's also one of those things of I actually think it's so good for competition because now there's a chess match going on. I've
There's
started
a story
every game
literally happening.
I've
Right.
started every game going left because I'm dodging this throwing knife. But maybe now I have a new lineup from the other team that goes to where I'm running now. And now it's like the chess match, and like that's how competition's breeded. Whereas now I feel like pros want it so easy. If I don't like something, it has to be wrong. It can't be that that's the game, the way the game is meant to be played. It has to be a problem.
Right.
know?
How dare you be at disadvantage at all, ever?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the part that like
It has to
just
be a
doesn't
pull
make
and a
sense.
give and pull, you know?
It always, it's crazy to me because like I hear it a lot with battle royales, and it's like you literally have RNG built into the core of your game, and you're worried about that side.
Yeah.
Like you literally RNG your loadout every single match.
Yeah.
So like,
Do you know
why,
what's
why
funny?
is this the issue?
It's funny because if you told somebody, like, if we just take some of these battle royale games, like, I'm gonna give you this AR, okay? The AR has bloom, right? So sometimes your shots just won't go where you point. You're like, okay. You're like, whatever. But if I said, here's your AR, it shoots perfectly, but sometimes your bullets just don't do damage, you'd be like, what? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like the response would be completely different. But it's just that one system's accepted, but at the end of the day, these games still have all these systems that are like advantage or disadvantages by nature.
Which, I mean, yeah, but as humans, we're just picking and choosing which
right, and it's just like just adapt to the way the game is, you know.
Right.
It's
but like the
when
developer has the vision, so you either support it or not. Is the way I look at it.
So the one game that I give a lot of credit for sticking to their guns on shit is Destiny. The maps
that game.
they have competitive.
Jared is gonna
they have competitive PvP and stuff like that, right? And I'm not talking about like Iron Banner or anything, just standard PvP.
Everyone's hitboxes are the size of Jared.
And I agree, the magnetism and shit like that. The way that the game is built, you're hitting shots that you shouldn't. I understand that, right? But I'm talking from a map design standpoint.
Yeah.
They do not give a fuck about making a symmetrical map, like at all. Like there are maps in Destiny where you are at complete disadvantage based on where your spawn is, and it feels like you're playing an older FPS. It has that same feel, but the same thing with them is that their atmosphere, the map building itself, the things that you see on the maps, the different locations you fight at, feel alive for those same reasons. They have small intricacies to them that feel good even when you're playing like Trials of Osiris or Iron Banner, right? Like these locations are memorable things, either from the campaign or from different areas in the world that were cut down or chopped down or whatever. But it has that feel to it of like remembrance of certain events that happened or certain kills on those maps, right? And every single time you play them, they don't play out the same way. Yeah, you're gonna have people fighting for special ammo or heavy ammo, right? It's a arena-esque
It's a
shooter
currency
at that point.
in that game,
right? And like
within
you
the
have
game.
to try to control power weapons, right? It has that feel to it, but it has that like I'm gonna call it magic of like the atmosphere of the different maps.
Well, it's like what it was before is like games were created with the vision of the developer, right? And their vision probably wasn't competitive whatsoever, but it's the community that made it competitive. No matter what the game was, like the developer just made it,
Right.
and people were like, you know what, 1v1 me, right? And they just go at it, advantage, disadvantage, whatever the fuck it was,
Right.
and that's how it like sprouted about. And now it's just becoming, we're so focused on competitive, we're not looking for original ideas and allowing the player base to take hold of it and do what they want with it.
It's
Because the developer trying to control it, which is completely taking the the life and soul out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think about like WoW, and Warsong Gulch, right? The map's a mirror of each other because it's meant to be an arena where you are fighting for these claims or whatever, right? It's meant to be symmetrical.
It's red versus blue.
Exactly, right? Whereas these games now, it's like, why is it symmetrical? It makes no sense. You've taken out of it. Some maps should be like, there's a map in Halo. What's that one? You can fucking shoot from each side. It's capture the flag.
Yeah.
Behemoth.
And yeah, that's probably the biggest point to bring up is like, we're not saying we're against
Narrows.
Completely against it. It's just like every map doesn't need to be this way.
Right.
It's so much better for the maps to have character. Like, if you think of the map as a story, what story is it telling? If it's that it's an arena, that's great. That's fine. That's where the story ends. Cool. Maybe include some things on why it's an arena, or like there's some areas that are like shot out because a previous battle at that arena. But what's going on is that you have these developers who make these maps and they need to be symmetrical for, like we mentioned, like just competitive purposes. And the maps have no character. They have nothing in the world other than the fact that, hey, this map is good. There's a box here. There's a box here. And that's where they stop, right? It needs to go back to that and have a reason. And like I said, tell a story. Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Call of Duty 4, a lot of those maps tell a story when you're just around the map. Some things are conveniently placed so that you can do certain actions, which is fine. No one's ever going to complain about that. Like, this fucking column fell perfectly where you could run up it. Why are you bitching? That's to me, that's good map design.
Right.
So
like that's where I feel like why Halo 3 was such a like why everybody's chasing the nostalgia of those maps, because there were maps that were uneven, they were asymmetrical, right? Where there was advantage spawns and shit like that, right? But the way that the game was developed, right, and the way the map was set up was like, all right, one side's closer to overshield, the other side gets invis. The other side gets invis and shotgun.
It's like play to your advantages.
Right, and the other side gets overshield. The other side gets overshield and sniper. And in the middle, there's a grav hammer, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not even playing fields, right? But it's a different strategy on both sides, depending on what side you start on. But then you have your maps that are symmetrical. And on top of that, like you were saying with the story building, like the pit, it's a training facility. It's meant to be military-esque, and it is in nature. There's military boxes everywhere. There's target tree everywhere, right? It's a firing range. And it's supposed to be symmetrical that way.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure in war sometimes those people out there, those soldiers out there, really wish that it was a symmetrical fight. You know?
Oh, I'm sure,
bro. Listen, I'm telling you right now, bro. I wouldn't have got my arm blown off if they didn't have high ground, bro. On God, like
right.
I feel like how extreme that is.
I think we would have won that fight had they not had attack helicopters.
Yeah, bro. How come they got air support?
yeah. Like, what the fuck? This ain't even. Time out.
But you know, it's funny. You said something, and that made me think of this. Is Rocket League? I'm always gonna bring it up. You know, near and dear to my heart. But Rocket League is all arenas. They have to be symmetrical. What? But you know what's funny is that this is more towards like the pros dictating things. Is that Rocket League had maps that were not all the same. Every single map in Rocket League right now is the same that's in competitive. There's like Rocket Labs, which is like experimental maps that you'll never see in competition ever. Because the pros bitched about it so hard they took them out of the game. There's a map called Wasteland that it was a desert and it was like a concave, you know, and the pros bitched about it because the angles were different. It's not as fun. Oh, it's this. How do I read the ball? It's like we'll adjust to the map. And to me, I think it'd be interesting to see what teams are good at Wasteland versus a default map. But we're never going to get that. Because the pro players bitch about it so hard, and then now they're like, why isn't there new content in Rocket League? It's like, because you bitched about it so hard, they stopped making it.
Yeah, but why are we gonna make something new when it's like all you want is this? Because these are the current pros. It's like you may be a pro on this, but you wouldn't be a pro on this, and that's what you don't want because you wouldn't be a pro.
Exactly, on this. Because it affected your performance so bad, and all you cared about was winning or getting good at the game as you saw its state. You know.
And it's like I see the argument for this usually being like people are like, you know, these don't create good storylines because people are going to complain and make these arguments that they only won because they played this map at this time in this order, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, these maps are symmetrical, and we still have those same arguments now.
So did
That
you guys
doesn't
play?
change.
Did you guys play Game Battles back in the day?
I don't know what that is.
Game Battles was a website. It was the MLG's website
Mhm.
Oh, no, I didn't.
for console gaming. It was
I
competitive,
never
right?
did know.
No.
So what I always thought was cool, right, was like when I was doing 2v2 bracket in World at War.
It was
Call of
essentially like
Duty.
wager matches, right?
Yeah,
Or was it
essentially,
actual tournament brackets?
or tournaments? It
Okay.
depended on what you signed up for, right?
Got it.
But what was cool was like, okay, depending on what team got to pick the map, right? The other team got to pick their spawn, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, you picked that map, right? We're going to take this side spawn,
Right.
right? And so knowing that what side was stronger, right? It was, hey, we didn't get to choose the map, but we got advantage off rip,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like those aspects of gaming, it's like the coin toss in football, right? Do we want an extra possession after the half or do we want the ball first,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's like, which pros and cons do we choose?
right.
Whereas I feel like now it's so streamlined where they don't want it to be that. They don't want to have to make decisions on those things. They want it to just be like given, like, and I feel like part of it is the MOBA issue where MOBAs are the same on each side and everything has to be equal for the most part. You know what I mean?
And then, League,
Um,
League was the most popular one, so that that's kind of a
Yeah.
standard people use now. Yeah.
What's funny
So-
is League didn't start out that way. Remember, there was if you were playing from fucking red side or whatever, you had easier access through the jungle.
They
because
changed
that
the
jungles
jungle
weren't-
to make
yeah.
it more balanced. But it's like, no, you
Well,
just
even
play
now it's not
towards your
perfect, right?
strengths.
Because
Well,
red
Baron
on
and
one
Dragon
side's
Pit.
right- yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
like-
yeah, but even still, for the most part, it's like.
But I know what you're
minute.
saying, Jared. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things of, again, you just streamlined it to where there's less decision making, and the games all start bleeding together. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yep.
I think this also affects the meta, because the meta is not going to change because the maps and the maps and the characters never change. You're playing the same game every time.
Yeah.
And it's like you're not sprouting anything new, where it's like if you had these changes and this these unique ideas and personality actually given to the designs, you'd see other players blowing up because of their unique strengths, right? And like that's the beauty of it, is like you have all these people with different strengths, and you may even have one person that has all the strengths and he is the top player. But it's like, seeing players play at these disadvantages create more honestly inspiring and entertaining storylines. It's like it's
Right.
no different than like RNG. Like, why do people love playing fucking card games? You're fucking gambling the entire time.
Well, like just like like from an FPS standpoint, just like cooler interactions, cooler fights,
Yeah.
right? Like
And
I
it's like
don't-
it's like when, dude, the biggest moments are when people win a 5v1. And it's like, imagine you winning a 5v1 at on the low ground or whatever the fuck.
So-
Without
Like,
the shields and
imagine
all.
if
Right.
Anakin beat Obi-Wan. You know what I mean?
right, like he was at a complete disadvantage. But I always go back to Crash. Crash was one of my favorite maps in Call of Duty, right? You remember the
I thought you
long
were
back
talking about
alleyway?
Crash Team Racing, dog. I was like,
Oh,
yo,
no.
No, when he first mentioned it, I was like, yo, Crash, okay. What,
So-
what we
so-
talking about?
he got my
Remember
attention.
you had the helicopter over here, right? And then that blown out building in the back in the long alleyway where people would camp that shit and hard scope with snipers.
yeah, just
right?
hold it, yeah.
Dude, the best thing was like knowingly taking that fucking fight, right?
And winning.
And winning. And being like, you know what? I don't give a shit
Yeah,
that
the
you're watching
ego
this.
peak.
I'm gonna fucking ego peek, jump, throwing knife you because I know the spot
Yeah.
that you're sniping from,
Yeah.
and hopefully I hit this shit or I'm dead.
Yeah.
And then like, hey, now I have a free flank through spawn from the back because I beat that one dude at disadvantage.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
feel that.
it's that kind of shit. Or like, that guy's holding close on the barrel right there, and you cook a grenade, jump the corner, and throw it, and you just destroy that cat.
Motherfucker
because
just
you knew he was
destroyed his
there.
microphone. He was like,
I know that too. But like you that's the kind of shit you just don't see anymore. Like I started
Yeah.
getting so bored in Infinite when I was playing it because like every angle was the same that I was peeking. Every fight that I was taking, it was like, okay, let me just spam grenades into this fucking room first and then slide in and take a fight.
yeah,
You
it's
know?
one of those
Right.
things of it's when you streamline the game development, you're gonna streamline the competitive aspect of the game. Some of the it's funny because I was watching a Halo 2 or Halo 3, and some guy did like a fucking icicle jump and then hit a sniper shot, and I was like,
you're like, oh fuck.
I was like, that was fucking cool.
Yeah.
But I'm like, when you make maps without those types of things in there, right? Where it's an ice map, so there's icicles. These icicles can fall. They just so happen to have a hitbox where you can jump off of them.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just designed that way. And someone found it and they're like, oh, you can do this icicle jump type of shit. And you're like, holy fuck, that's cool. And you could be like, that's a dish. Oh, we don't get an icicle jump on this one. It's like this motherfucker's flying through the air and wide open, guys. Just shoot him. Like, come on.
Well, like one of the things that was like really cool with old Halo games, right? Like you guys have played a little bit of Infinite, so you know how magnetic those fucking grenades are in that game. It's suffocating, right? Dude, some of the best, like the ways you could tell somebody was good that was in your multiplayer game was how they threw their nades in Halo, right? Hey, dude, there were times where like you'd be running through, I say running, but there wasn't a sprint in Halo 3, right? But somebody would be chasing you from behind you, start getting shot in your back, and you would throw a grenade off of the fucking roof above you, right? So that it would bounce twice, hit the awning, and then the roof, and then drop and blow up and hit that guy. And then you turn on him around the corner and one-shot him, right? Or like bouncing grenades off of ramps to get the arc off of it, right? Like the way that people in Halo 3 had to throw their nades, it had to be accurate and you had to throw them well. Whereas in Infinite, you just fucking yuck these things and they just land at your feet, roll towards you.
Like I said, it's like all streamlined gameplay. It's more approachable. It's easier to grasp. It's all these different things.
These hero shooters, a new character comes out. I'm going to use Valorant as an example on this. And it's like, there's only so many ways you can make a new flash, a new angle. It goes above and around a corner instead of down. Instead of throwing it forward, it explodes in 3 seconds instead of 2 seconds. There's only so many ways you can make a fucking smoke. It's a circle. It's a wall. It's a circle you can shoot through. It's a circle you can't shoot through. It's like, these are all so basic and unoriginal ideas, honestly, at the end. Because at the end of the day, it's a smoke and it's a flash.
Right.
It's like, when you open the doors to these unique maps with unique decisions, you can start having unique characters, such as a game in comparison from like League. I mean, look how many different ways can we make mobility in League of Legends, or some kind of execute, or how many
different ways can I make infinitely scaling stats?
Yeah, and it's like that. Like the games this way with the character creation because of the stale gameplay itself.
Yeah,
it's like when you open up uniqueness, and I'm going to use Heroes of the Storm, which is my favorite MOBA ever, because of the uniqueness. Or wow, what the fuck did I just say? Uniqueness
New York
of the characters and the maps, because the maps all have different objectives. The game's always changing. The meta is different on all these maps. The characters have true uniqueness. Like look at Abathur compared to Jim's Raynor.
Dude, literally,
James Raynor.
When we played, so when I played in Heroes of the Storm, that's like a conversation you have as a team. You go through the thing where you ban a map, I ban a map, you ban a map, I ban a map, right? And the moment we picked a map, like if we already played on that map, it's automatically ruled out or whatever, right? Or in one of the tournaments, it was like, these are the 3 maps we're playing. So it's like, oh fuck, we suck dick at Infernal Shrines.
Right.
We don't have a good team comp for it. So now we need to hit the lab. We need to figure out how we're gonna make this happen, right? And that level of uniqueness to character design and maps made it to where Falstad's really good on this map, but maybe he's not good on this map, which is fine. And that actually makes characters more balanced to me. When they have flaws to their kit, the maps can make up for that. Oh, this map is really, it's like, it's no different than like Overwatch. There's some maps where Reaper sucks dick to me. I hate playing Reaper in these maps. I'm just saying, like in Junkertown, fuck playing Reaper in Junkertown. So I don't want to get hit by Fair every 2 seconds.
And here's the best part with that, right? Is like, then you see a Reaper on that map that's really fucking good at just playing that particular map.
It's played.
And you're like, damn, dude, like I don't even know how the fuck you pull that off.
Right.
Like that's sick that you were able to just pop the hell off on a map that you should not be good at.
And it's one of those things of, oh, you shouldn't have been good. And it's more impressive. Now you're like, damn, that guy's like really played that smart. And it allows another layer to the games to me. It's like
if you do a side-by-side comparison of like League and Heroes of the Storm, it's like Well, you're saying League's a stale game. Well, so is Heroes of the Storm because every map has the same meta. It's like, okay, so let's see, 3-map rotation for each game, right? League of Legends, you're probably going to see the same character bands, same exact characters being used. You know, a handful
It's
of
all
characters.
dictated by the
And
new
then
character that released and the
like,
items.
So we'll
Right.
say Heroes of the Storm is the same meta on every map, but now you have a person that's playing 3 different characters and basically has to, because of the meta, which already is now a 3-to-1 compared to, you know, League and Heroes between
Yeah.
the two, which means this game, each map is going to be played differently.
And it's so funny because if you even like talk to our friend group of why they liked League more than Heroes, like I love Heroes, my favorite MOBA ever as well. And the biggest complaint is it's too hard to solo and that they don't know the game. Like there's too much to learn. And it's like, well, every time you go on a map, it's different. Like, yeah, on this map, you play for a pillar. On this one, you're pushing the base. On this one, you're playing this objective. Oh, maybe you have to split to 2 objectives. So Brightwing's really fucking good because you can just teleport across the map. You know, like shit like that.
It's like all these are showing the skill and like, you know, the ceiling
game
of a
knowledge.
person. Yeah, and their, you know, their ability. And
Game
it's like
sense.
that's the whole reason we're all playing competitive games.
Right.
That's what we're all striving for.
Well, like the thing that I like about
you don't want to
Heroes-
change because guess what? This is all you know how to do right here. This is it. This is all you got going for you.
The thing that I like about Heroes is that it puts more emphasis on team play rather than
100%.
fucking CSing and items.
And also, it makes you fight because of how the objectives
Right.
work. It makes you fight as a team or by yourself, right? It makes you take the fight instead of, you know what, I'm playing Nassif. I'm not going to fight you for 15 minutes. You know what, I'm playing Tryndamere. I'm fighting your base. I'm not fighting a single
Right.
person on your team.
Like,
Like,
and the nice thing is like every character also has different build paths, right?
Yeah.
So like
Different build paths for each map too.
right, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing that's cool is like you can dictate how you want to play your character that game. Whereas like yeah, you can change an item or two in your item
Dude,
build
in
to
League,
optimize
and, you know, we're not-
League.
You can grind ranked in League and build the same cookie cutter fucking build in every match and be
Yes.
successful.
and you know,
Right.
I do want to say we're not going to bring up fucking, you know, balancing all that because that's the same in every fucking game.
Yes.
Every game is fucking unbalanced. Every item is going to be unbalanced. It's going to be a fucking balancing act the entire career. Of
In
the game.
order for some items to be good, some items have to be bad, or they just have to not exist. It's the law of nature.
So just don't bring that argument up.
If
Right.
thing exists that's different from other thing, one will intrinsically be better than one thing. Like it's that simple. It's like a super simple concept. If I have
Yeah.
3 items, like they're gonna fluctuate on which one I want to use, and like one be
'Cause
better
I
than the
hate seeing that
other,
'cause
one's
it's like,
bad.
This game is balanced better. I'm like, oh my god, not this argument, please.
So bad.
Honestly, I think that the reason that people are drawn to League so much more than Heroes, right, is that League is its own universe with its own characters, whereas Heroes stole from other universes and put them all into one.
I mean,
right?
it's definitely
Actually-
for like.
Where I personally have an affinity for Blizzard titles and IPs, right? Like I have an affinity for those characters, and actually seeing them come together is cool to me, right? Like the idea behind it. That's not everyone's cup of tea.
Well, I
Right.
also say for the casual player, I mean, if you're playing the same game, it's easier to play, right? It's easier to
Yeah.
pick up. It's easier to understand when you're watching it. So, like, yeah, like, I definitely can understand why League, you know, has
I was
more
gonna say,
attention in that regard.
it actually ties back into our original thought about like the soul of the game. Like
Yeah.
these games become so streamlined that they're more approachable. It's like the TikTok mindset of
Yeah.
what's the fastest way for me to feel good? Well, I can play this character and nothing has to change. Everything's always going to be the same, and I'll eventually get good at it. But then in Heroes, I'm going to throw you a map curveball. I'm going to throw you all these other like objective curveballs, and it makes it more it makes it less approachable. It makes it
Right.
better. It makes it more in depth. The game has so much
I was
more
gonna say
better layers.
when you add depth, it discourages people.
Yeah, because
absolutely.
at the end of
So-
the day, they're MOBAs and they have high ceilings. So
And-
any
and-
casual player, it's going to be hard for them to push that,
And
right?
that's
Yeah.
actually why I think, like, just like I said, to circle back of why the soul of games has gone to me for the most part. Now, I will say that right now is like some of the most exciting I've had gaming in a while. Like Overwatch 2 is Rekindle That Flame, Spider-Man, Rekindle That Flame. Like there's so many games out right now that I'm so excited for, and it's the first time in a while where I've don't have enough time to play the games I want to play. I'm like, fuck, dude. I want to play Overwatch with my friends, but I want to go play this. I want to like
wait till Dragonflight comes out.
Right. Like that's a good predicament to be in, and like I love being in that predicament because it makes me so excited to get home.
I actually feel exactly. I have something to look forward to, and it feels good when I'm playing the game.
And I think Overwatch restored that for multiplayer games for me because there was that time period where I was just like, fuck, these games are it's just like fucking, it's whatever, right? Like,
yeah, honestly, when we first brought up Overwatch, I think it was like 3 podcasts ago, and we were talking about before release. I definitely never thought we would be in this state that we are now. I thought we were gonna, be the ones to talk shit about it one time, and then Overwatch 2 is dead.
So before you go, Sean, I want to read. I read a tweet yesterday. It was like, I fucking love the fact that I want to stay up every night and play Overwatch till 4 a.m. But I fucking hate the fact that I stay up every night and play Overwatch until 4 a.m.
Yeah. So like
that's literally me every night right now.
Absolutely.
Did you guys see the little Apex event that they added?
No.
Okay.
I deleted Apex again, so
I mean, I understand you hate battle royales, but this was pretty cool. So they added this golden ticket, right? Because you know how the new map's coming next season, the moon, right? And you can
is that what it is?
That's where you can load the moon and like discover the map?
Yeah, so it was cool because they didn't hint to shit. Obviously, leakers leak shit, but you could load into a normal game, not competitive.
Yeah, honestly, fuck leakers.
You had to load into a normal game, collect 125 crafting material, go to a crafter and craft a golden ticket. What was cool was because it's a normal game.
Video game leakers. Let me put that up.
Yeah, video game leakers. And once you crafted the golden ticket, you had to pick it up off the machine. So if you died while making the golden ticket, somebody jacked your shit, right? But once you made it, you had it permanently, and it put a timer on the game select, the game mode select, and it said this many days, right? Once you had your golden ticket, if you didn't log on and craft your golden ticket on the 19th on my birthday, right, you couldn't travel to the new map.
That's cool.
So you could queue it, and it was like your ticket to a ship. It took you into the old Titanfall 2 drop ships, right?
That's
where you would normally jump out of the back and into the map. And you flew to the moon and then could discover a portion, not the whole thing, until people found that you could break the boundaries of the map like every game and go and explore the dead areas where you can walk through walls and shit like that aren't actually accessible. But you could explore an area of the moon, and it was like, this is where there were signs that were like, this is the future of the Apex games, like stuff like that. It was pretty cool, right? But like that, like little shit like that were added to the game that tells a story for the new map, right? And allows you to get like a little sneak peek at it, a little feel for the new areas and shit like that.
Well, it's because they have a story really cool in mind, right? Why? Well, like it's one thing to say, what if we make a moon map? And then it's another thing to say, why do we make a moon map, right?
Right.
And that sounds super like cliche and lame, whatever. But it's like, no, that it's important because we need to establish why we're here. In order for you to care, and it may not be something like that may not keep you over forever, but for a lot of players, that level of depth is enough.
Honestly, I don't know. It might be going forever because, I mean, look at Fortnite. They got something going on every fucking month.
Dude, and think about those events that Fortnite has. Like, that's one of the games that was like bringing that event back and giving you something to talk about, something to do.
Well, it's like you're at that point you're doing it for the players, and it's obvious because it's like, why else would you be doing this? What does this do for you as a developer?
It's like an intrinsic understanding of what makes people come play your game. Whereas WoW lost that when they started adding, like I said, making things simpler and more streamlined kills ingenuity. It kills your drive. It kills the reason you play something. When my only goal is to get an item so I can later do a higher Mythic Plus, my motivation's gone. But when my goal is to clear Naxxramas in one night and do it with my buddies, and like that's the goal, like I feel more empowered.
Right. So
speaking of WoW, why does Savadas the what's it called? The trademark for characters I will not serve. Yet spent an entire expansion serving the jailer just to get to the end to say I will not serve.
So
I just wanted to put that out there.
that brings me up. You guys played WoW a lot earlier than I did, and a lot more in depth for longer, right? Do you remember? So the old talent trees, I have an affinity for. I liked the old talent tree system.
You're talking about the OGs, like the
OGs
ones that are coming back to,
from
in a way.
Yeah, in a way.
Like
Instead
when
of
you
this
had
cookie cutter
3
shit that we have
tabs,
now.
you had 60 fucking
Yes.
points.
Like you could go into
multi-spec.
Prot, you could go into Fury, and you could go into Arm.
No, the key was to always get the crit chance into this tree, get the haste into this tree.
Yeah.
And then,
Right. So, do you guys remember with Paladins in particular? This might be more geared towards. I mean, you both have played Paladins, but Chris,
Jared was
when Seal of Blood was bad,
mm-hmm.
right? To spec into, you wouldn't spend the point to get Seal of Blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was an item set that came out where a specific set piece had a bonus for Seal of Blood, or it affected the stats of what Seal of Blood did. And people didn't know about it until it was one Paladin on the forums popped off in a raid group or something like that, or in arena PvP, and everybody was like, "Holy shit, what is this build?" Right? Because he was spec'd into Holy and the Retribution tree instead of the Prot tree a little bit, right, for Devotion Aura and shit. And he went into Seal of Blood and Holy and was pulling fucking crazy numbers. That's the shit I miss. Well, That's that magic shit of like player choice, where this dude saw this, drew a connection, was like, let me test this shit, and then ran it and was like, yo, I am God mode now.
I actually have already spent time theory crafting on the fucking Dragonflight talent trees that they have out on Wowhead.
Yeah.
For both Paladin and Warrior. Like doing that same shit. Like, how much can I stretch on this tree to get to this point? So I can still get this that I want.
It's always like a give or take. Like, I have to lose a couple points here. Can I afford losing this to get this? Like, and that's that's like the engineering I'm talking about, where it's exciting. It makes it like when you talk about it now, it's like you go into a raid, you better have these 7 talents because you have to.
Well, it's like each row is like, this is single target, this is utility, this is AE. What are we doing?
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like to me it's lazy development in terms of
100%.
just it's because everything's streamlined, because it's more mainstream, because we have all these players. How do we make it easier for me to balance maybe something that's overtuned? Well, if there's only 3 options, it's pretty quick for me to fix it.
It's no different than why every class can heal now. Every class has some kind of, immunity or something like there's no real uniqueness except for the fantasy of the class, like a rogue having stealth. A paladin, thing is bubble, but it's like, what the fuck's a bubble when another class has like, not ignore pain, but didn't a warrior get something that's like?
Oh no, ignore pain was OP as shit. No, it was ignore pain.
Yeah.
It was stupid,
different things like that. It's like, so is that really an identity of the class, or like yours just looks different than mine?
It's not an identity of the. It's literally just you have the same ability. It's same ability, different font. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like I'm Times New Roman, your Comic Sans. Like I don't like that's it.
Right. They mainstreamed it so hard that like people couldn't have a bad build, right? Like it may not be most optimal.
Now you have bad classes.
Right. Whereas like I thought it was really fucking funny, and I always bring this up because it was one of my favorite things for Warriors and WoW. Gladiator stance.
Oh,
I thought Gladiator stance was so fucking cool.
And I'm talking about just the idea alone is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, like actually, instead of just being a tank, I was a DPS with a sword and board, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So sick, right? But then people theory crafted things, started doing weird shit, went into arenas and were one-shotting people with revenge procs. Right? Like, and I was an arena player. I was grinding arena at that time, and I thought that shit was fucking hilarious. Well,
dude,
and on top of that, it was dope.
The guy who one-shot a Nixia because of Reckoning stats. Like it's just funny.
It's weird that they listen to like the remove this idea instead of tuning it.
Right.
Like that's how unique that idea was. Is it something that should have stayed?
Why can't you say, okay, that's really funny that happened. That's cool they found that out. Let's not take it away. Let's just pull it back so it's still a way you can play.
Right.
So I'm not taking something where you can't do this. We're just push it back a little bit.
And tell me you can't do that when you literally have passes built into the classes to reduce their, how much health
Right.
or armor and shit they have. Like, come on.
Like one of the things that made me get into playing a warrior was stance dancing. Right. I went away from playing my paladin because I was watching
auras removed?
I was watching
Oh.
Swifty. I was watching Bajira. Right. Well, that and auras got removed. That pissed me off too. And Seal of Blood was gone and like shit like that. Right. And so like I started playing it because like I started seeing a high level PvP for warriors, and it was interesting to me to see like the outplays with banner charge macros and like shit like that, or focus target macros with intercept, right? Like that type of shit was dope just from a movement around the map, around the arena. And then when shit got weird, you pop defensive stance, pop your defensive cooldowns, and you had macros to equip your sword and shield.
I think all you're getting at is it just allowed you to play differently, and allowed you to play in a way where it was like more engaging for you, and it's just more unique.
Yeah, it felt good to spell reflect deep freeze on mages, right? Like it felt good to spell reflect pyroblast, and to hit those buttons at that precise timing in order to actually outplay somebody.
I mean, if we're talking about it too, it's like you're essentially playing 3 different characters. You had battle stance, you had defense stance, and you had berserk stance.
Yep.
They all had unique abilities. So you're essentially playing 3 characters in one, which was really a cool idea. Whereas now it's like defensive stance is a buff that reduces the damage you're taking and reduces
like
the
we said,
damage.
it's just streamlined. It's just streamlined.
And then nothing else changed.
Right.
Right. And like that was the thing was like even on Battlegrounds, right? Like you could tell good warriors based on when they use their cooldowns, how they use their cooldowns, and how they moved. Right. That's why when we play Battlegrounds now and I'm on my warrior, you'll still see me heroic leap and charge midair. Like shit like that. Because that was like the movement thing was to like jump away for a second, catch a heal, and then charge back, right? Or jump around a pillar and charge so fast they can't just line of sight you.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. A lot of things I do in games is because it looks cool. So
right,
it looks funny. Like
on top of that, yeah. So it's like they like going back to like auras and gladiator stance, right? Gladiator stance was like in the game for what 3 months?
Yeah.
It was like not even an entire arena season, and they were like, okay, this is a problem to pull it out because the damage mitigation was stupid on it. But like on top of that, the revenge procs.
Yeah, but
right?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like one of those things of, again, streamlining shit just killed the ingenuity of it. Killed your like, why do I have to look further? I only have these options. I know the ceiling, and it's so bad now to where if you go on and like how people calculate what's the best. Well, if we just run the numbers where we only run this set, like it's basically running 9 factorial, right? Or like 3 factorial or whatever over and over again. It's like, okay, well, I discovered that I do this much damage in this one. So by the numbers, it's this. And it takes so much out of it. Like I said, that to me is pulling that soul where people aren't talking about it. There's no discussion. It's one of those things of you see that in a battleground, like, dude, did you see that fucking guy? What is he running? Holy shit, what does he have? Like, and then it took some of the take your own spin on it.
Yeah, it took some of the depth out of the fights too. Like going back to like Wrath when Deep Freeze was in the game, right? You had to be frozen like first before you could actually be stunned and deep freezed, right? To get bursted. So like cleanses and movement tech from paladins and shit like that to counter that, to get your DPS and stuff out of those situations, made for clutch plays of like, hey, you were just out of line of sight long enough for me to give you Hand of Freedom to get you out of that snare so that you didn't get stunned and then comboed, right?
Yeah.
Like those things were all aspects of the game that you had to think about positioning and reasons why you were doing things. Whereas like now it's so mainstream cookie cutter that like
this is the way you play it. You wait for this combo. That's it.
There's a way that this meta exists, and this is the meta. There's no switching away from it.
The outplay shit now comes down to who uses their cooldowns faster.
Who
can execute their dance faster.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, it took out. It to me, it takes out the competitive drive to a degree too. It's like some people are really satisfied that there is the cookie cutter and you just have to learn the cookies, right? I just need to learn how to bake the best fucking chocolate chip cookie because everyone wants chocolate chip cookies this season. But next season, maybe oatmeal raisin, right? And that's all it is. It's not who can give me the best chocolate chip cookie, then give me the best red velvet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just to give like a fucking stupid ass analogy about cookie cutters. But,
Yeah.
We're just talking about range of the skill of the player.
Yeah,
right?
it's just...
there's a reason you can look up a video and everyone's doing the same shit because of how streamlined the game is. There is the optimal, build for it.
Yeah.
And the optimal team comp now.
There's not a surprise attack that no one's expecting. You're like, why the fuck are you running that?
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
And the CC systems, we can talk about that another time. But which we talked about that. Like CC should all DR just across the board. There shouldn't be separate CCs.
I'm also just like, it's literally bad for a game when a player dies not being able to play the game.
Right.
I 100% believe that through and through.
Well, I don't want to like dive into the CC conversation. I was gonna say, I think at the end of the day, I'm excited to see where Dragonflight goes for PvP, to see how this changes the perception of players. Like when I go into a raid, am I gonna be like bullied, or I don't want to say bullied? Am I gonna be badgered because I don't have this one talent, which is what it became?
Well, I mean, there's definitely gonna be groups like that still, right?
Elitist.
Dude, there'll be that, but think about this. What hasn't been found yet? Like, I feel like when these expansions comes out, the game's it's a discovered game. I already know this is the best talent tree because during beta, I only had to try fucking 4 different items, Yeah. Whereas now, who's gonna fucking stir the pot? Who's gonna find these builds that
there's gonna be that one person, it's like they got a certain set of gear, they looked at a certain stat, and because from what I've seen, there's like, if you go across, if you look at a row, the biggest row I think has like 8 different options on it, which I feel is a good variety to like give people time to test a lot of different shit out.
Right.
When you mean row, you're talking about like down the talent tree, how many options are in each row?
So there's 3 different tiers, 3 different row tiers, okay? And there's 3 columns. No, I'm sorry. There's like, it's 2 columns at the top that spreads into like 2 more that spreads into 2 more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying like, as far as and also some of the baseline abilities, like you can just straight up skip them. Like some of those baseline abilities you have now. So it's just an interesting from the surface. It looks interesting and like there's actual variety. We'll see.
Yeah, like I said, it comes off like it's not going to be a solved game as soon as it comes out. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a time where this build may be really strong and everyone's running that, but someone is going to get that armor set. They're going to find this combo. They're going to find this thing that changes it, and I see that across multiple classes happening. So that's what I'm most excited for.
What I respect really too is that there's also Covenant abilities that make a return in a lot of trees. And also, Legion weapon abilities.
Like artifact Odin's weapon Fury, abilities. Oof.
Yeah, artifact weapon abilities. Yeah. So,
and I think all that's really cool. Like I'm like I said, I hope that's enough change to make WoW feel good again. Because I hope WoW feels kind of like what Overwatch 2 did for me, where I always loved Overwatch. I always, but it just fizzled out for me. It got to whatever. Whereas like now with Overwatch 2, like the re-release of that. It's just rekindled that fire. I hope that Dragonlance or Dragonflight or whatever the fuck it's called. Dragonflight. I hope that rekindles for WoW, and it brings back that sense of discovery.
One of the exciting things I saw in the Red Paladin tree specifically is, so your Blade of Justice.
Yeah,
is the blade that comes out of the ground. Yeah. Puts the sword in the air. What's it called? One of the builds in it is Blade of Justice casts Consecration on the target.
Oh, that's sick.
There's also buffs to the Consecration where it's like you get healing in your Consecration, or your Consecration slows them, and just different things like that. Is like, okay, we're taking a step forward. We're not taking a step back. We're not removing anything. We're looking at improving on things.
Yeah,
and like making gameplay where it's like, because a lot of the time as a Red Paladin, it feels bad just to lay down a Consecration under you. Like, you're going to walk out of it 2 seconds later.
Part of it is, like, the global itself isn't worth pressing, at least in PvP.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's not, the damage isn't noticeable enough. It doesn't do anything for you.
It's funny because what you're talking about is part of why I have, like, a class crisis right now. Is because when I go to expansions, I actually look up what people think their default rotation should be. And I'm like, that's 3 buttons. I'm not playing that class. This is 4 buttons. I'm not playing
Right.
that class. If there's not enough to keep me engaged and there's not enough buttons for me to press, I just won't play the class. Whereas like, okay, you need to keep an uptick on this. You need to watch for this. You need to do this. When this procs hit this is your priority. This is like, I'm like, okay, so this has a lot going on, and I want to discover that system. It's like,
So what Affliction Lock used to be prior to it being deballed.
right. So this makes me excited because it points to, like I said, just getting able to dive into that. It's not about who can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the best. It's about who knows when to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when the fight happens. You know, like, and then how can I make my talents like, I'm playing this class a lot. I don't like that I have to move all the time. Let me try this build. Like I said, the ingenuity of discovery and explorability within the classes themselves.
Yeah, this specific example, it showed me that there was actually like thought given to it, because Consecration is an ability that they've got. Like sometimes it was like I forget when it was, but it was taken away at one point for Ret Paladins.
For Ret Paladins,
Mm-hmm.
and
it was only
and then it was given back
thing.
because it's such a staple ability of a paladin.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you found a way to craft it into a Redditant's kit that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like there's excitement there because it's like, okay, what do other classes get? Right.
Right.
Again, not talking about balance and all that shit, because it is what it is.
But what are these opportunities that other classes are getting too? And I think, like I said, I think that's what will be the most exciting.
That's where my
part.
excitement is right now.
Oh yeah, it'll be like discovering again, because one of the
Fury Warriors getting out like to go Avatar. Like I mentioned that one a few times.
Just to leave it on this note, when you talk about like memory, like time's relative, right? When you're a kid, you're experiencing all these new things, so time moves really slow. But as you get older, you've already experienced that stuff, so it's not memorable to you. And it's like what it will feel like to rediscover the game again. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So the thing that I would like to see utilized more from old WoW to current WoW, right? We have all these old spells that people don't fucking use anymore, right? Farsight, Eye of Kil'jaeden,
Eye of the Beast.
Right. Like all of these they're cool spells. I fucking love them. I used to do the cancel on Farsight where you could just continue to go and go and go with it. Where you just keep casting it from the point you were at prior. But like back in the day, when you look at some of the older raids, right? Sightlines weren't the same in the raids, right? The way that the actual encounters were built. So when people were first experiencing it, they were having to use scouting tools and shit like that.
Using your class identity in a unique way.
Right. Yeah. And being like, hey, we need a shaman to look up around this curve. Like, how many mobs are we looking at facing? Are we going to pull extra packs? Like, all that shit. Like, there was a little bit of like strategy behind it. Whereas like now, when you load into a raid, any modern raid, right? You can see all of the packs. You know how many mobs are there. You know which one's a healer. You know.
It's also the age of information.
I was about to say, yeah, we're in the information. I feel like that specific scenario that you're talking about is very hard to recreate.
That's also why we raid the way we do, where we say, don't watch a video, don't look up the fights, because we don't want to know about that. I even am getting to the point where I'm like, do I even want to read the fucking journal at this point? Like the journal that tells you. I mean, it makes sense you have intel about the fight, but it's like I want to just discover the fight fresh.
Sense of discovery and like having to.
Honestly, I feel like that would be fulfilled if classes actually had quests again, like class quests. Like remember, one of my
Paladin mount.
Memories, the Paladin mount, but also the whirlwind weapon on the warrior.
How about the blood tabard?
Oh, yeah, like just things like that. Like where you actually would use your abilities to do things there. I feel like that would fill that gap as well.
Why do you think I love the Green Fire quest for Warlocks so much?
It's so funny. It's so funny. We started this episode talking about the soul for the game. We're all talking about ways that we attach to characters, right?
Right.
And like how all those things are missing, and they may seem like minute things, like, oh, it's just one quest line. No, it's one quest line.
We remember these today.
But when I'm a level 20 paladin in the Barrens, I have to do this quest in order to unlock this totem. Like, that's very unique. Yeah. That's a unique experience that not every player got to do unless they level the shaman. Doing the forms for the druid, those are all like you had to fight the bear to get bear stance. You had to fight, all those things were all ways where they gave them unique identity that just lack, and it's like bring back those.
Becoming High Lord.
Yeah.
Oh my!
I knew it, Jared.
Sean, did you ever do that in Legion, bro?
Which one?
Well, when you open up the Paladin class hall.
Oh,
you become
yes.
the High Lord, and
yeah, the High Lord.
you know,
It's-
seeing everyone set up in like the church,
Yep.
and them all like kneeling and saying their lines and shit. To
Oh,
you,
yeah.
it was just like that made you feel like that hero.
It's
you know what
funny
I mean?
because
Like,
that's actually one of the expansions that's one of my favorites. Like Legion
Oh.
was so good because it brought some of that stuff back and like
Yeah.
having a unique identity where like, oh, I am actually the hero. Because a lot of time what happens to MMOs is you're this minute character. Here's the big guy to come save the day. You know, like
Yeah.
Thrall comes in and he saves the day. Thanks for clearing all the trash, though.
Well,
speaking on that, Blizzard, I'm done reading quest logs. We're 10 expansions in, or whatever the fuck.
cutscenes,
Yeah, cutscenes,
Give me
voice
cinematics.
line, like voices,
voice
anything
dialogue.
like that. I'm not reading a whole page. Like
I
it's
mean,
not
they're
happening.
not going to do it because they haven't announced it and it's not a
Yeah.
thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think, like I said, we all look forward to something in Dragonflight. And I think that's a good place to end here. But
It's funny how we got here.
I am interested to know what you guys are most interested in Dragonflight if you're playing, or what your favorite gaming memories are where you
What
thought
we
the
just
game
talked
had
about.
had soul, or maybe your least favorite things, like, oh wow, this game really does not do any of those things for me.
Or
So
we're fucking idiots.
share,
I don't know.
yeah,
Right,
share,
maybe you disagree with us. Maybe you
Yeah.
hate all the things that we were talking about.
Share some of your thoughts on if you think that we are kind of on the same track as you or not, and then as well as just what your experiences are with those. But we appreciate you guys tuning into the episode, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah,
Yep.
appreciate
Take
you guys.
care, everyone.